everybody, my name is Crys'Dawna. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Tool Talk with Crys'Dawna, and this video we are going to go over just the very basics of using a miter saw, kind of how to read the angles, how to know where to put your miter saw when a plan calls for different angles, also how to properly cut wood when you're using a miter saw, safety, things like that. We're not going to get technical in this video because I really want it to be very beginner friendly and just the basics so that you feel comfortable and know how to use a miter saw. We're not going to talk about, all the things. We're not going to talk about the things that you don't need to know right this minute. I want you to feel comfortable using a miter saw first, and then we'll do a more advanced video in a little bit. But this is the basics of how to use a miter saw. Keep watching. Okay, I'm going to talk to you for a second because I feel like it's easier for me to talk you through this than do a voiceover. This is my miter saw. This is the third miter saw that I've owned. It is a Hitachi, which is now called Metabo. Same company, Hitachi, Metabo US, whatever. The green is the same, it's just the name is different. I really like this miter saw. It does what I need it to do, and it also has a much bigger blade on it than what I started with, which is not always necessary, but once you start getting into more intricate woodworking, you start using bigger things like 4x4s, you start stacking things, it is better to have a bigger blade. So we talked about this before. This is my miter saw. So a chop saw is one that just comes down like this. It doesn't move 45-degree angles. Mine is a miter saw, so it moves all different angles, and I'm going to show you that in a second. And also it's telescopic, so I can push it down, so I can, if I had a bigger board, right? So sometimes you have maybe like a 1x12, and I can go down in the chop saw motion, and I can pull the saw back so it cuts. So I can just go down and it cuts in that spot, and then you telescope it back so that it cuts that piece of wood that's a little bit bigger. When you are using a miter saw, so if you have a chop saw, all it does is go up and down, right? A miter saw without that capability goes up and down, and it moves, the angle moves, the blade does. When you have a telescopic one, it can do all the other things, and then it also can move to cut wider boards, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. I'm gonna show you something here in a second with the miter saw. It's a really great tool to have. I think a miter saw is going to give you the best cut out of all the cuts. Make sure that you have the right blade, you have a nice sharp blade. You'll know if your blade gets dull, which this one probably needs to be replaced, you're going to start seeing splitting in the wood. It's not going to cut as nice, but if you have that, you can just kind of sand it down and smooth it. So I'm going to talk to you about the measurements and how to read the miter saw. Most of them are the same. Again, this is US spec, so it's going to be, I got it from the States, okay? So I don't have a European one or something from Australia, so I'm not quite sure if it's the same. I'm assuming it is, but I'm gonna show you how to read it, this particular model. Okay, so first of all, anytime you're playing around with your miter saw, whether you are changing the blade or you're playing around with it, you're gonna be sticking your fingers in here or whatever, you need to make sure you unplug it. So that's the first thing I'm gonna do is unplug it, because we don't need anything crazy to happen. So it is unplugged, it is not in the power source. Yes, this is one reason why I haven't been doing a lot of woodworking here, and I finally bit the bullet, is because I do have to hook this up to a transformer. But if it dies, it'll be worth it, and I can just hopefully buy one when we get to the States. Or it won't die, I don't know. So let me adjust my camera. Okay, so with a miter saw, let me show you. First of all, this bad boy is heavy, okay? Not all miter saws are heavy, but this has something on the bottom of it that hooks into a platform, so it's even heavier. But we're gonna pretend like this miter saw is just a chop saw so that you can visualize exactly what I was talking about. When you have a chop saw, the only capabilities of a chop saw is going up and down, okay? And it's gonna be all the way back there, up and down, okay? This part is not going to be as long because you don't need it to be as long, and I'm going to show you why in a second. When you have a miter saw, you have the capability to move different angles. And generally, every sorry. Every few angles, the more popular angles, this will stop. So if you needed to put it back at 0, I want you to listen to this. Okay. Generally, when you are moving this, there is a safety lever right here. Okay. This is a lever. You're going to hold this and hold it at the same time. And you may have to brace your hand. You may have to brace your hand here, depending on how easy it moves. And you're going to move it to where you need it to go, right? Either you go to the left or you go to the right, however you need to cut that angle. And when you are done, you just let go. And it's still kind of freely moving. Do you see how it's freely moving? But I'm going to push it to 0 and I'm going to show you what happens. So I've pushed this button, right? And it's kind of freely moving. I'm not even, I mean, I can move it like this now at this point. I'm not having to hold the handle because once you release that lock, it's freely moving until it hits a certain area. So we're going to push it to 0 and I want you to listen. And now it doesn't move. It automatically locks itself at 0, okay? So that's how you know, okay, it's reading at 0. Although the number 0 is there, it will automatically stop at 0. And then I'm going to show you 45 degrees is a very common number for beginner woodworking. It's very rare that we're going to use any of these other numbers, but it will lock at other numbers. So remember, you have to push the handle that's over here. Push this handle, and then we're going to move it. So push the handle, and we're going to move it. I'm going to unlock it. So now it's going to freely move. See, it's freely moving. I'm holding it right here just so you can see that it's freely moving. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to the next spot that it's going to lock. Boom. It locks over here. And I want to say that's, I don't know what degrees that is. 15, I think. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22 and a half. Yeah, 15. So each notch is 1. Sorry guys, I haven't used this in a long time. So each notch is 1 degree, right? 0 degrees. So that means you're 90 degree, you're parallel. So you got 1 degree, 2 degree, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so you've got 10, 11, 12. So really, these are the degrees. So if it says you need to cut your wood at 10 degrees, then you're going to go right here to this 10. Remember, it's going to lock at 0, locked, click the button, go over to 10, and it doesn't lock. So you need to make sure that it is on here the way it needs to be on here. Okay, line this little guy right here, this little pinpoint, whatever this is, this little compass, line this little compass up with the 10, and then you're at a 10 degree angle. Look at this. So do you see? You're at a 10 degree angle. 10 degree angle. Doesn't seem too much, but it is, because this is 0. We're gonna push it back. That's 0, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go all the way over to 45, because that's the cut that we're about to make. So we're gonna go all the way over to 45. So I'm just gonna keep this locked in. I'm gonna keep this pressed in, because if I don't, it's gonna stop. It stopped. Okay, I gotta unlock it. It stopped. Okay, I gotta unlock it. So I'm just gonna push it all the way to 45, and it's going to lock itself again. Let me back you up. Ready? It's locked. So it's not gonna move. So this is a 45 degree angle. The other side does a little bit larger of an angle. So that side only does 45 degrees, right? This side goes all the way past 45. I'll show you. This side goes all the way past 45. So if someone's like, you need to cut it at a 50 degree angle. Okay, this one's gonna lock at 15. So it locks at the same one on this side, 22 and a half, 32, 45. And remember, this side doesn't even go all the way. This side stays at 45. But this one, you can keep going further, all the way over here. So if you have something that says, hey, I need you to cut a 50 degree angle, boom, there you go. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand. See, it locked. The 45 degree angle, it locked. So we're gonna go all the way to 0 first, because I want you to understand how this is gonna work when we cut this. When I said that it's got the telescopic on it, I'm gonna show you what I mean. So I'm gonna unlock this because the back's unlocked. And what happens is I can go down and I can move it, right? So if you have a board, let me give you an example. This board is pretty wide. It's 1200 millimeters wide. So this is in inches. I'm gonna pop it on the screen in inches. It's 1200 millimeters wide. So I'm gonna put this on my miter saw. And really I should probably use a table saw for this because it's just table saw, or maybe a circular saw because it's just slightly too long. But sometimes when you get into tools, you do things. You do things sometimes that it's not meant for. But this is a good example. So pretend like this is, because I don't have anything that's smaller, but I don't. So pretend like this only goes to here, right? Pretend like it only goes to right where that ends. I'm gonna take this off and I'm gonna show you. So with a chop saw or a miter saw that doesn't have this capability, all that's gonna do is go down, or it's going to be able to go to an angle and go down, right? So here's how the telescopic one works. It's gonna be able to go down, and then it's gonna pull forward, and remember that blade is gonna be moving, so it's cutting that entire piece of wood up to that point right there. So it's basically cutting to here. And so you can cut boards that are wider. So we'll just pretend like this board right here is, just pretend like it's there. So this, if you had a chop saw, right, or you just had a miter saw, it's only gonna be able to cut this right here, okay? Only this part. But if you have one that's got the telescopic capabilities, it's gonna cut here, and it's gonna be able to cut that entire piece all the way to here, okay? So that's the difference between the saws and how to know which one is best for you. I really, really, really think with woodworking, you should have a miter saw with the telescopic capabilities, really. Okay, so before we start, I've got my glasses on. I wear glasses. If you don't wear glasses, it'd be a really good idea for you to wear goggles. Really, you just never, ever, ever know. Chunks of wood, especially if it's an older saw, things down here in the bottom that get stuck down here could flip up. It's not worth it to lose your eye. So that, and honestly, I mean, I have long hair. It's probably not gonna get stuck in here, but weird things have happened. So I pull my hair back, okay? And usually I have headphones in. And so you probably want to have headphones in or ear protection because this bad boy gets really loud. It's a high-pitched noise. I'm gonna show you in a second. I'm gonna show you really quick on this cut how loud it is, and that way you can really visualize or understand why it's important to wear ear protection. So from this point forward, I'll do voiceovers when I'm cutting anything, and I'll have my headphones or earplugs in. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to cut it with our miter saw. If you have a miter saw that has the telescopic capabilities, especially if you're cutting smaller wood, you're gonna wanna make sure that you push it all the way back and you lock it in place. That way it doesn't move and do crazy stuff, right? Now, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that this is at 0 degrees because I am just cutting a straight line. And when you're cutting a straight line, 0 degrees is basically a 90-degree cut, okay? So it's a straight line. Now, I don't have my saw on yet, so don't worry. When I'm cutting, remember I always cut, and I try to cut it, I'm trying to get the, when I'm cutting, I always cut a little bit bigger than my line. So I always try to cut on this side. And that's why I put the word cut on here, so I know that's the side. And I always cut on the bigger side that I have measured because you can always go back and trim a little bit off. You can't add wood to it. So I always cut bigger. I measure twice, cut once, and I always cut bigger. So you can see right here when you put your miter saw down, right? Oh, it's not lining up with your line. So you want to move it and you want to test it first. You don't want to put your, if your miter saw is on, please don't put your fingers there. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna keep your fingers over here and you're gonna move it yourself. You're gonna keep it flush with the back right here and you're gonna push it up and you're going to find that line, all right? So here's my line right here. I'm gonna come over here to this side so that you guys can see. Okay, so remember, this is my cut line. This right here, you see where that saw blade is? Right here? Where my saw blade is where it's gonna cut. So there's going to be a cut. We're gonna line it up right here. And you see where this little tooth is that we just made? That is where it's gonna cut. It's gonna go right down here, okay? So that is what you wanna do. You wanna line it up on the outside of your cut line. Okay, so I'm gonna plug my miter saw in and I'm going to turn on my transformer and we are going to cut this. Keep your hands away from the blade. So when you're holding it, I always hold it all the way over here. I'm going to use with my right hand, so I'm right-handed. I'm going to push it down with my right hand and hold it with my left all the way over here. I'm all the way over here. Now prepare yourself for this noise. I apologize, I will not keep showing you this noise. So when you go down, it's not gonna cut, right? Because you need to hold this trigger right here. Watch, when I hold this trigger, okay, that is going to be what you need to push. So you don't want to hold the trigger right here. You want to pull the trigger slightly before you get to the wood because you don't want it to move the wood. You want it to already be spinning once you start going down into the cut. You don't want to hold it right here and then pull the trigger because it's going to get caught and it's going to be a mess. So turn it on about here. Once you turn it on there, you're going to start pulling it down. Make sure it's measured. There we go. I moved it a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna hold it with my left hand. I'm gonna have it up here. I'm gonna squeeze the trigger slightly above where the wood is, and then we're gonna push down, just straight down. Now, I let go of it once it's done, but I did not move my wood. Did you notice I held it in place? When it was going down, even while it was still spinning, I held it in place, held it in place, held it in place until it comes up here and stops spinning. Because if you move this too fast and this is spinning, it's going to catch, it has a chance to catch, and it's gonna go flying. So wait till this is done spinning and then let go of your wood and move it, okay? So now we have this cut, remember I told you that it's gonna, see, and this is what I'm talking about. I probably need a new blade. When you start seeing this, you need a new blade, okay? Also, this is oak, and so you may need a little bit more pressure when you're going down because it is a harder wood. So woods like pine are gonna cut a little bit easier, but this is a harder wood. So do you see the line right there? It was on the other side, remember? Here's our cut line. It took a little bit out. So that is how you cut a straight line. The next cut I'm going to make is a 45-degree angle. So with this piece of wood, I only need the angle as close to the edge as possible while saving as much wood as I can. Hopefully that makes sense. So you're gonna see a line, but the line is only to remind me what way the angle needs to go. So you're gonna see me cut it before that angle. That's just because I had to remind myself that that's the way the angle needed to go so that I could butt it up against the other piece of wood. And I'm trying to get it as close to the edge as possible so I just want to cut off the least amount of wood as possible so that I can use as much of this board as I can. After every use, I always vacuum my miter saw out so I can get all of the sawdust out in all these different areas. I just like to do it because it helps the longevity and it keeps it clean, and I just like to take care of my tools. So that is what I do. And I also make sure that my blade is down and locked. So I push the handle down and then I lock it. That way the blade is down and, it's in the safest position possible. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that that video was helpful. I hope you feel a little bit more confident now going into using a miter saw. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. Make sure you are subscribed if you're not, and that's it. So until next week, this is Tool Talk with Crys'Dawna, and thank you guys for watching and happy creating, and I'll see you later. Bye.